Good morning. Thank you for joining our first Metrology 360 webinar. We really appreciate you being here. My name is Jennifer Penza. For those of you who do not know me, I have been with Fox Valley Metrology for about 12 years now. I am currently serving as the Customer Success Manager for Fox Valley Metrology. It looks like we have about 89 attendants right now, so it looks like we've hit on a really important topic for our customers. So we're really glad that you're here. We hope this will be really helpful for you. Just a little bit about Fox Valley Metrology 360. It is a highly advanced, free gauge and vendor management software, completely homegrown, designed and continually improved by internal amazing staff, with input based on our customers' needs and requests. It has been designed to dramatically reduce the amount of time you guys spend managing your gauges, and much of it is customizable to your needs. Today, we're going to be outlining many of the features of Metrology 360. We will do a deep dive into some of the details of these features and how they can benefit you. However, because the topic could go on for hours and we only have an hour, we're going to try to keep it as easy as possible. And if we need a deeper dive into something, you can ask that through a question, or we can talk to you about that at a later time. There is a question and answer available through this webinar, and you can certainly do that through that chat function. Our Vice President of Sales, Steve Toll, who was also instrumental in putting this entire Metrology 360 program together for you, he can help answer and monitor those questions. This is being recorded for future reference to share with colleagues, etc. So we just need you to know that. So now we'll get right into the main bread and butter of this webinar, and we're going to have you share my screen. Hopefully you should see the Fox Valley Metrology website here, and we'll talk about the login feature. The login feature was designed for your safety and security. Everyone within your organization can be assigned their own username and password. Your usernames will be your individual email addresses. And if you have not already been assigned a username and password, by all means, let us know and we'll get you set up with that. So you're going to navigate to the Fox Valley Metrology website. You're going to go into the upper right-hand corner where it says login, and that will take you directly to your login information for Metrology 360. As you can see, it's my name and my login or password. So we'll hit login, and this is going to take you to the main screen of Metrology 360. In this main screen, on the upper left-hand side, you're going to see your company name. Now, if you happen to have more than one company that you work with, let's say it's the same company but different addresses, and you have individual email addresses for those, you can toggle between those companies right here, and it'll show you all the different companies you have access to. You can make sure that you are in the right company by seeing the name up here. If you want to change, you would click onto one of these. In this particular area, you can see a global overview of all of the calibration information for all your companies. It's helpful because you can transfer gauges from one to another, but always make sure that you are on the correct company when you're doing any of your editing or viewing. So we'll click out of that because the company that we want is indeed Sample Manufacturing. Below your company name, you are going to see the main feature menu. So the main feature menu is the dashboard, calibrations, packing lists, quotes, on-sites, invoices, job status, Ecrip, administration, referral program, and at the very bottom, you're going to see the help function. We're going to quick start by this top black bar. The top black bar has a couple features you should know while you're navigating through the Metrology 360. The top one here in red with the white bars simply hides your main feature menu, and that gives you a much larger viewing space of the entire area here. Click it back on and you can back into the menu function. Also over to the right, you're going to see a little bell. That little bell is going to give you any notifications that happen to be pertinent to your company and obviously the logout. So we're going to get right into it and explain to you that when you first get into Metrology360, you are going to be taken to the dashboard page, which is what you see right here. This dashboard page gives you a quick view of very pertinent information right at your fingertips. We call these little items widgets. And you can add or remove them right here in the Customize field. In the Customize field, you're going to see all of those that are available to you. So we'll go through those real quick here. You can see active gauges. It's a pie chart showing gauges that are currently due, overdue, or just current. And it gives you the percentage of them. Then the next one is going to be your calendar view. Your calendar view gives you a calendar that actually displays any of the service events that are coming up on sites, any gauges that are due. You can flip the calendar from month to month through those little arrow keys. We're going to put it back here so it actually shows something, because in sample manufacturing, not everything is available to be seen. The next item that you can put on to your home view would be your expenses. Your expenses will show you year to date how much you're paying in calibration, repair, and new gauges. The next one that we're going to want to show you that you could put onto your home page would be your notification center. This would probably be a really important one for you to have because all your notifications are right here. You can see if you've sent us gauges, a job has been created for you. You know we've got your gauges in hand. You know if they've failed as we're calibrating them. You'll see failed calibrations reports or certs here. You can see when a job is reviewed. If it's in the review process, you know it's getting ready to be sent back to you. When the job has been invoiced, if any item has been put on hold for a various reason. So notifications are really important for you to see on a weekly, perhaps daily basis. The other thing that you can see is open quotes. So if you request quotes, your quote numbers will be right up here as to what the quote is. You can view on the quote right here by clicking on it. And then you could also see the date it was done, whether it was a quote for equipment or for calibration. On this page, you can also accept or reject that quote. If you were to accept the quote here, it's going to give you a pop-up window where you could enter your PO number. So this is a really nice widget to have right on your open page. Out of tolerance findings can also be added here if that's something of importance for you to view on a regular basis. Little charts and graphs of out of tolerance or gauges that were found out of tolerance different months of the year. The next one is going to be your calibrations. And this is going to show you how many gauges have been calibrated over these months, which ones were done in our lab and which ones were done on site. And last but not least is our turnaround time. We know that you guys are really interested in turnaround time. It's not good to be without your gauges. We do our absolute best to get you your gauges back as quickly as possible. We want to show you that we give you ultimate transparency here. Just remember that your turnaround time here is based on when your gauges hit our lab to when they're ready to be sent back to you. This does not include shipping time to us, shipping time back to you, or any weekends or holidays. So that information is also available at your fingertips. So if you wanted to customize that dashboard, you would add these particular widgets in the first column by clicking this plus sign, in the second column by clicking this plus sign. If you want to remove any of them, you would just delete them. And then you can have your home page customized to exactly how you'd like to see it when you log on. So the next thing we're going to go into on this main menu is the calibration menu part of it. The calibrations are, of course, going to be the one that you use the most often. It's the calibration of your gauges and how they're managed. If you go into active view, you're going to see the most recent calibration record for each of your active gauges. You also have history view. The history view will include past calibration records, inactive gauges, and it include history of everything. It'll also include all the active gauges. The due gauges would be anything that's due for calibration within the next 30 days. Overdue is going to show you anything that's past due 30 days. Obviously, the due and overdue are combined. And then you can have custom cal views. The custom cal views is kind of a cool view. Let's say that you don't want to search through all hundreds of your gauges on a regular basis, but you want to see your micrometers, or you want to see your thread plugs on a regular basis. You can set those views right up here. You can do a search for all your thread plugs. You can do a search for all your micrometers. You could do a search for all certificates that Bob reviews. And then you could save that view here, and you're going to find it right here. So if you look at what we have on our sample page, micrometer gauges is going to show you only micrometer gauges. Obviously, in sample manufacturing, we only have one micrometer gauge, but if there were several, you'd see them all listed here. So we're going to go back into active view, and we're going to talk a little bit about this grid. I'm going to open up the page for you to see it a little bit clearer. And on the top, what you're going to see is you're going to see a red toolbar, if you will, that display the categories that are shown in this view. This grid view is nothing more than a spreadsheet, a fancy spreadsheet, but it really does a really good job at showing you what you need. So in here, we're going to have some action items that you can utilize, and you're going to have all of these areas available. Status, of course, is always going to be active in your active view. If you were in your history view, you would see active and inactive gauges in here. You're going to see your cert numbers, the due dates, the cal done, gauge ID, serial number, gauge type, make, model, location, sublocation, and condition received and returned. The way that you're going to go through this grid is if you had, say, 5 or 6 pages, you had 50 to a couple hundred gauges, you would click this way. But in sample manufacturing, we only have 29 records, so we only have 1 page to show. I'm going to go through some of these functionalities that you can see here. I'm going to go through these action buttons real quickly. First, if you hit select here, select any one of these, can't select there, right here. If you select any of these, put a little check mark in the box. What that is going to do is it's going to allow you to download those selected certificates. You can also download all of the certificates without selecting them. But if you need 1 or 2 just downloaded, it would be easiest to check mark them and get them that way. The other thing that we have here is a printer icon. The printer icon is designed specifically for our customers so that they can easily print a new label should they need to. Why would they need to? Possibly you've changed a calibration due date. Possibly you've added a new location. Or perhaps you work in an environment that is very dirty or greasy and the calibration label falls off. Fox Valley Metrology can help you get set up with a printer so that you can get these labels printed right at your desk anytime you need them. The other icon that we show is a plus sign. This plus sign serves 2 purposes. You can either copy this existing calibration record and create a new calibration record, or you can edit this particular gauge. If we click on this plus sign, you're going to get a warning. Do you actually want to copy this record and create a new one? And you would say yes. Or nope, don't want to copy it. I just want to edit some of the information on this record. But if you were to copy it, it would give you a screen that looks just like this with all of the information preloaded. The only difference is it's going to give you a brand new certificate number. You're going to keep this information most likely the same. You're probably going to change the PO number, change the date of the calibration, and all of this information below. Why would you need to create a new record? Perhaps this time you had to send it to a vendor for a different outsourced vendor for calibration rather than Fox Valley. Perhaps it's something you're going to calibrate yourself this time around. Notice the certificate number begins with an X rather than a C. The reason for that is it differentiates which things Fox Valley calibrates for you versus which things you have calibrated on your own. Once you've got this all done and corrected, you can go into the Documents and Images field. You can upload your certificate here, either from your outsourced vendor or the calibration certificate that you used yourself. So we're going to not save these changes. I just wanted to show you how this was done. We're going to close out of that. The next thing that I want to show you is this little traceability chart. The traceability chart is really good for anytime you're having an audit. It's going to show you all the measurements and test equipment that Fox Valley Metrology used when we calibrated your gauge. Our ID numbers, the next calibration due dates, and our actual certificates can be viewed right here. When you review those certificates right here, it will drill you right down to any time we've sent something out to a third party for calibration, and that shows you missed traceability. So it's very important for auditors to see that. I can't tell you how many times I was working in an office where an auditor wanted to see this information, and I had to search through files and files everywhere to find all of the certificates. This is one of the best features that you have to use during an audit. The next icon that we have is a traceability icon. I'm sorry, not traceability, a wear analysis icon. The wear analysis icon is really a cool icon if you want to see the progress of how your equipment is being calibrated. You can see the last 3 calibrations here, just the first and the last time it was calibrated, or you can see all the views of your calibrations. What you're seeing here is you're seeing a window of tolerance. Everything in white is the intolerance. Anything in gray is out of tolerance. As you can see, this particular force gauge was dead on, right in tolerance. If it had in any way drifted out, it would show that line going up. I'll click on another one that was found out of tolerance. And in that one, you are going to see how the wear analysis chart shows you how far it went out of tolerance. So this is good for a number of different things. It's good to say this is drifting out of tolerance way too often. Maybe it's time to replace this gauge. Or you can see over the length of time how many uses it has before it goes out of tolerance. And by doing that, maybe you want to be changing the calibration cycle. So it's useful for a lot of different reasons. Last but not least, we have our little eyeball, which is an icon for reviewing excuse me, certificates. Sometimes people are required to review a certain amount of their certificates or a certain number of them. Used to have to download them, review them, sign them, and then back upload them. In this area, you can actually go into that little eyeball and you can say, I want to review this one. First of all, I should probably do it correctly by having you actually review the certificate to take a look at the certificate. You're reviewing the entire certificate. You're looking at whether it was in or out of tolerance or not. You look at all the numbers, you make sure everything is coherent. You hit that review and you're going to see a watermark, reviewed by Steve Toll, date and time. Only for you, it would be reviewed by you. The other interesting thing about this review is if you're reviewing an out of tolerance item, or gauge rather, sometimes if it's been out of tolerance, you're going to have to do an impact statement to say whether or not this gauge affected your manufacturing process. Notice over here, out of tolerance condition, that's how we received it when we received it at Fox Valley. You have another little icon over here where you can upload an impact statement that you have and save it. And then the next time you go into this, you're going to see that impact statement. You're going to see that you reviewed the certificate. You're going to see if it had any impact on your manufacturing process, and an auditor is going to be really happy with that. So that's pretty much the end of those little icons. We're going to go a little bit about the search and sort capabilities right here at your fingertips. If you're looking for just a particular gauge, you can actually type in that gauge ID number here and click enter. And if you do it right, it should pop it right up. So maybe this is not a gauge ID, but we're going to try it one more time. There we go. One too many zeros. And it's going to only show that gauge rather than showing all of them. If you want to do it by cert number, you can do the same thing here. You can clear out this search and you can instead put in a cert number. And we're going to just put a C number. There's your cert number. You can go ahead and search for it, and it's going to show only that cert number. You also have search criteria here. In this search criteria, you can get a drop-down box. Let's just say you want to see all of your gauge types. You want to look at all of your plain rings. You search there, and it's going to bring up your standard plain rings. In addition to these little simple search, you have a Binoculars, which is going to give you a much greater advanced search, if you will. Let's say you want to look at condition received, and it contains out of tolerance. Go ahead and match all the criteria or only match some of the criteria, search, and it's going to bring up all your out of tolerance gauges. So a lot of powerful search functions that we have in this system for you. We're going to go back over here. We're going to clear this out. And now I'm going to go over all of the different features of the certificates themselves. So we already know that you can download selected certs. You can download all your certs. Obviously, the easiest way to just view a cert would be by clicking on the cert itself. When you click on the cert itself, it's going to show you the view of that certificate. Any information that you want to see is right there at your fingertips. We've already talked about certs that start with a C are calibrated by Fox Valley. Certs that are marked with an X are calibrated by you or outsourced to another vendor. If you were to upload those certificates in here, you would be able to click on these as well and see those certificates here. Don't believe any of these X certificates have them uploaded, but just notice the difference between the Fox Valley certificates in blue and the X certificates that are in black. The next thing we're going to go through is the fact that if you have put in any certs in an X, you are going to be missing these little action icons. You're going to be missing the traceability and the wear analysis chart simply because the data does not exist on our end for anything you've calibrated on your own or sent to a third party. The cool thing about this program is that you can edit gauges, certain information. In order to edit a gauge, you're going to click on the gauge ID number itself, and that is going to open up a system data field. That system data field is going to give you several different options. Notice that there are 5 tabs across the top: a data field, a custom field, documents and images, calibration history, and Ecrip history. Make sure you're on the right tab when you're trying to make changes or edits. So in this area, in the data field, you can do a number of things. You can add a serial number if you have it. You can add a location. You can actually change the calibration due date. You cannot change the calibration date. That's set in stone, and that would be absolutely not possible. The calibration due date can be changed by changing your calibration cycle. If you want to change it to only 2 years instead of 3 years, or 1 year. See, as I click through the calibration cycle, it changes the due date. You can do years, you can do months, weeks, and days. You can also make this active or inactive here. Let's say this particular gauge could not be found. You want to inactivate it so an auditor doesn't look at it and see that it's out of calibration, and because you haven't calibrated it because you haven't been able to find it. Put it into the inactive stage. It'll drop into your history. You'll never lose it. You'll never lose the history on it, but it won't be in your active stage. You find that gauge again, you come back in here and you mark it active, and you can go ahead and save those changes then. The other thing you can do here, if you do not have a printer, a label printer set up by us, you can ask for a sticker if a label falls off. You click this here, save changes, and our customer service department will get that request and we'll get a sticker put out to you. The other thing you can do in here is, let's say you're tracking other things besides just your gauges for calibration. Let's say that you're looking at other items like maintenance of things, and you're going to add maintenance in here. You can say it doesn't need calibration. So you can get rid of the calibration, and then there'll be no calibration due date, but all of your maintenance information will be in here. So this is the way you can customize it. You can upload documents and images. You could upload another PDF. So you could upload instructions on how to use this gauge. You could upload a picture of it. So you have a functional gauge that's kind of funky looking, and you've got a new person starting. They don't know what it looks like. They could come here and they could look at the picture of it. You're also going to see calibration history in here. Had this gauge been calibrated more than once, you would see all of the certificates. You would see the history of it. You could actually click on the certificate here and see the history of those. Ecrip History will also go into a little bit later. Ecrip History will allow you to see where and when this gauge was used over its lifetime if you use our Ecrip function. We'll again go into that just a little bit later. We already went through most of the top menu area here, the add cal, or the download here. You can also export this grid to a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. You would do that right here by just hitting the export button. The other thing you can do is you could add a new cal here versus using this little plus sign. Plus sign is going to copy all the information. The add a new cal record here is going to give you a completely blank page to start from. The only thing it's going to give you is a new certificate number. Remember, it's an excerpt because we're not doing it for you, and you can fill in all the information here. You can go ahead and upload the certificate that you have on file for this particular gauge, and then you can save this information here. So we'll go ahead and close out of here. The next item that I need to show you about is the save view. In the beginning, I showed how you could have custom views. Your custom views are like all micrometer gauges, all thread gauges. You would go through here, you would search for what you're looking for. Once you've got all the information you wanted, you would go ahead and save that view as all thread plugs or all thread rings. Dynamic dates. Dynamic dates are a little different type of search criteria. It's meant to enhance these custom views. What it can do for you is you can go ahead and get in here a normal search where you want absolute dates, like I want everything that I had calibrated from January 1, 2020 through 12/31/2020. It's going to save that as a custom view. Every time you go into that custom view, you're going to see those exact dates or those exact gauges within those dates. That would be just a custom view, but a dynamic date would give you a view so that if you wanted to see all gauges within the next 3 months from April 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2022, you would save that as a dynamic date. Then next month, when you pull that view up, it's going to give you gauges, from May 1st, 2022 to August 1st, 2022. And every month later, it'll give you that 3-month view. That's how you use your dynamic view functionality. Last but not least, and my favorite part of this whole system, remember I said you can customize it to what works for your company, is to customize the grid layout. In this layout, you can change the way that these columns work. Let's just say you want the cal due and cal done before the status, or you want to change the condition received or the condition returned into a different area here. You can move them around and have them in whatever order you would like them. You can also hide some of these features. Maybe you don't want to see the serial number on your page here. The serial number can still remain there, but maybe you just don't want to see it in your grid. You can make all those changes, plus you can add custom views in the customize the layout. So when we go into the customize the grid layout, it's going to give you a whole new window. And it's going to show you the items you have available to add to the grid. So you could add repair price. You could add repair description. Let's say you're doing a project for your boss and he wants to see all the repair prices that Fox Valley has done for you in the last year. You can click on the repair price because it's always hiding there behind the scenes. You just don't have to look at it in your grid. If you turned on repair price, exported this grid to Excel, then you could go ahead and give him the report you need. Or let's say you want to turn something off. You can turn it off by clicking it off right here. You don't want to see condition received or condition returned. Or let's say you want the condition returned and condition received switched. You would just click on the one you want to move and move it to a different area. And then it would change where it shows in your grid. We give you a lot of things that you can add in: technician, temperature, repair price, etc., gauge description. But then we give you green fields, text, memo, number, date, booleans, that you can use to whatever you want to use them for. I've given just a couple examples. I've added a text field called reason for inactivation. Many times people will inactivate the gauge, but they want to know why did we inactivate it. So let's click that one on. Another one that I've added in here is an employee-owned gauge. A lot of people want to keep track of their employee-owned gauges and put the name of the employee there. So let's go ahead and click that one on. Go up to the top. Let's save that layout. Again, remember, if you have more than one company that you work with, make sure you're in the right page and make sure that you only change the one you want to change, not all of those customers or companies. We're going to change just sample manufacturing here. And we're going to go back into the active layout. And we're going to look at the grid now. And we're now going to see that we have reason for inactivated in here. And we have employee owned here. Here we have an employee owned gauge owned by Joe. Okay. If you ever wanted to search for only Joe's gauges, you could do that with this search function. Reason for inactivation. Let's say that you are inactivating this gauge right here. Go ahead and inactivate it in your data field. And why are we inactivating it? We're going to go now into the custom field, because remember we turned on a customization here. And the reason for inactivating this is because it is no longer used. Or you could put in it is missing. So we'll go ahead and save these changes. Now we can see it's no longer used. It's now inactive. So now if we go back to the active gauges, it's going to move it out of there completely. Because remember I said active gauges only have your active gauges in it. But if you ever want to find it, you're going to find it in the history area. Because you never ever lose any of this information. All you do is move the status to inactive. So we can find that gauge right here. It's now in inactive because we no longer use it. So that's how the customized layout works. The sky's the limit here, guys. You could do so much with this custom layout. It's incredible. We have customers that use it for a lot of different reasons. Like I said, they track all company assets, or they track all recurring events such as HVAC maintenance or document review. A lot of things you can do with this. So basically at this point, we're going to see if you have any questions. And if so, Steve's going to help field those questions. Steve, are there any questions out there?
Yeah, Jennifer, we've had a couple pop through that I've been able to address already, but it might be good to address with the entire group. So one question that was asked was showing how the impact study pop-up was accessed again. If you could just show that one more time.
Absolutely. So of course, you're only going to be able to probably put impact statements on a gauge that has been found out of tolerance, because the whole idea there is that you want to see if that out of tolerance gauge has had any impact on your manufacturing process, or you may have to do it on an out of tolerance gauge that was left out of tolerance. You're probably going to inactivate this gauge, but at some point in time, you may need to find that out. This little icon right here, and that is located under the condition received on anything that was found out of tolerance. And you're going to just click on it right there, and you're going to choose your file here. Your file should be in a PDF format. You'll go ahead and find it, and then you'll save it, and then it'll be part of that record permanently. Does that help answer that question?
Yes, I believe it should. Thanks, Jennifer. Guys, if you guys have any other questions, please use the Q&A right now to chime in. This will be a great chance for that. So just give me 1 second here as I process a couple of the other ones. So the next was that came in was regarding adding a new record in for a gauge that was already into the system here.
Okay.
I think just a little bit of clarification around that will help, Jennifer. If you just want to explain that, you know, how you're doing that. It's not necessarily copying, it's just adding in a new record for a particular gauge ID.
Exactly. So let's just say this force gauge M007-1 was calibrated by Fox Valley last, but you're going to send it to the manufacturer this time. It's going to be the exact same information, the exact same ID number. You're going to click on this plus sign. You're going to copy the record. Yes, you're going to copy the record. All the information will remain the same as far as ID, gauge type, range, make. All of this information should stay the same. It's going to be an active gauge. You can change your purchase order number here. You can change your calibration cycle here. When you sent it out, it will either have come back in tolerance or out of tolerance. That can be changed here. The way it was received can be changed here. The location that you sent it to can be put in here. The technician's name that's showing on the cert can be put here. You can actually take the temperature, humidity off that cert, the calibration price that you paid, or if it was repaired, you could put the repair price in here. You could put comments in, sent to manufacturer due to issues, repair was done, etc. And then you can go ahead and in the documents and images area, you can upload the certificate you got from that outsourced manufacturer. And you can go ahead then and you can save these changes. And when you save these changes, it's going to give it a new certificate number, which is going to be an X number showing it wasn't calibrated by Fox Valley Metrology, but it was calibrated by this new vendor or this outsourced vendor. Hopefully that helps you. And then in addition to that, what I like to tell my customers is that if indeed that's the case, you can also add a custom field, which actually gives you, let's say this custom field would be number 4 down here. It says vendor certificate. So then you could put your vendor certificate number right in here, and you could take that certificate number and line it right up with the new X number that you get. So you can see that this was outsourced, but this is the vendor's certificate next to it. Hopefully that helps.
Absolutely, Jennifer. Thank you for that. There's a couple more questions that I will address via the chat function. If you want to just move on in the sake of time here, we can always circle back if we have some extra time at the end.
Okay, sounds good. So the next thing we're going to go into is the packing slip function. It's kind of the next several of these, the packing slips, the quotes, the on-sites, the invoices, and the job status. Basically, these were added as part of the vendor management part of our Metrology360 gauge management system because they help you manage what we do with your gauges. So packing slip is one that you should become extremely familiar with and use if at all possible. And the reason I say that is when we receive a shipment from you with your gauges in it and a packing slip that you have prepared off of Metrology360 is in with that box, it automatically queues it in our job internally in our system. It decreases the amount of turnaround time. It helps reduce discrepancies and errors in gauge IDs and descriptions, etc. If you just handwrite a packing slip or you make a typo on a packing slip and then we enter it the wrong way, then later on down the road in the process of the job, the gauge ID number might be wrong, all sorts of things might be wrong, and it's going to delay you getting that gauge back. So we really suggest that you try to use the, if at all possible. It's just as simple as can be. So we'll click on it and we can create a packing list. Again, if you have more than one company, make sure you're in the correct company that you're making a packing slip for. If you need to switch the profile, you can do that here and it'll give you your choice of companies, but always make sure you're shipping from the correct company. It's shipping to Fox Valley. Now you can add gauges in here in a number of ways. You can add a gauge ID right here. If I have the correct gauge ID, it should pop it right in there. ID number is perfect, gauge type is perfect, range, everything is correct. It shows the last certificate number. So when we get this, there'll be no doubt as to what we're getting and there wouldn't be any kind of typos in the gauge ID. You can also add a gauge from a search. So let's just say you want to send in all the calibrations that are due between this date and this date. Now in my sample manufacturing, I don't have a lot of gauges in here, so I'm gonna go back a little bit in time to make sure that something populates in here. And let's just do today's date, the 13th. So everything that's due between this date and this date, obviously you're not going to wait that long to do your gauges, probably be maybe every 6 months, every year. go ahead and search. It's going to populate everything in there for you. And then you're going to review it and say, oh yeah, I need everything except for, I don't need this and this and this. So you're only going to click on the ones that you really need calibrated. Click, 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 click. And you're going to say, okay, let's save this. And they're going to all populate right into your packing slip. And let's just say that right now, this multimeter is going to need some repair. So let's put a little description in here. You know, multimeter dropped or multimeter not functioning on something, whatever the note may be, please evaluate for repair. You can add your PO number right in here so that when we get it, we've already got your PO number assigned to this job. You don't have to email us. We don't have to email you. Everything comes right into our receiving department, goes right into the lab as quickly as possible, and then we can get going on your gauges. Let's say you're getting ready to send all of these gauges in, but something's come up. Oh, I'm just going to save and print, but I don't really need to print it because I'm not done with it yet. I can't put it in the box yet because I got to quick do this job now. So let's just X out of it. And let's say tomorrow comes, you can go back into the history and you can say, well, now I can add to that packing slip because there's a few more things that I want to put in here. You go and you can edit it. And now you can go and add more, or you can subtract things out of it. Then you can save it and print it. Once you print it, you print a copy of it and put it in the box. We get it. We automatically queue it into our system simply and easily without any errors. And you always have a history of the packing slip that you sent to us. So you can see when you sent these items, you can view it. So packing slip history and packing slip creation is an extremely important item that you should get familiar with vendor management. Next, your quote requests, another thing. So many times we get requests for quotes. You have to email, you have to call. Here you can go right online and request a quote right from the website. Simple, easy peasy, same way. Make sure you're in the correct company. Okay, we just want this one. You're not going to be able to request a quote for new equipment at this point. It really wasn't designed for that. But you could request a quote for calibration. Again, you just want to put a quote in for all of the calibration that's coming due, or all you're doing overdue gauges. And then maybe you don't want all of these. Then you just go ahead and click them off, and you choose not to keep them all in there like we did in the other area. Or you can just type in your gauge ID here, or you can type in right here. So there's so many different ways you can add the gauges here. It's simple, easy. The other thing that you can do in here, if you were to ask for a repair quote, please understand we can't give you a complete repair quote till we get that item in and our technicians evaluate it to find out what's wrong with it. What you will get is a quote for calibration, and the repair quote would come separately. You also have the drafts of all of the ones that you have created in the past, and you also show history of quotes. So once you've asked for a quote, then you can come into history and you can actually see your quotes right here. You can click on the quotes right here and you can say, oh, I forgot all about this quote. Yep, I do want to go ahead with this. Here it is. This is what I want to do. I want it all taken care of. You can go in and accept it. You can automatically put in your purchase order, and you can go ahead and, or you can upload that purchase order right here. Choose your file and upload it, save it. It immediately is going to go to our quoting department. They're going to get notification that this quote was accepted by you, and they're going to get going on it right away. You can also reject a quote in here. Yeah, this is one I really didn't want. We're not gonna send this in for calibration. We changed our minds. We're gonna do it at a later time. Just hit the reject key, and rejected reason, waiting for next month or waiting for next year. Whatever your reason would be for rejecting a quote, I'm just going to close it out. It takes it off of there and it shows that it's been closed and it was who it was authorized by. So quotes are really an important function for you. On-site is another one very, very similar to all the rest of these vendor management areas. You can request an on-site, same kind of thing. You can request, always use the right company. You can request a date. Just because you put a date in here, please understand we won't definitely be able to meet that date. You can do down into the notes and instructions and say, perhaps the week of April 13th, if possible. Go ahead, add your gauges in here that you want for your on-site, add gauges from a list, add all due gauges, or you can also choose a file. You can upload an Excel spreadsheet of all the gauges that you want to do for your on-site here. Submit it, save it as a draft first until you're ready, or submit it, and then our scheduling department is definitely going to get with you and get that scheduled. Invoices can be good for your accounting department. They can come in here and look at invoices, see which ones are paid, which ones haven't been paid, see what job numbers they were, open the invoice right here, date range selected. They can go in and find a particular invoice number, so forth. Sometimes it's good only for your accounting department to have this information. Turn everything else off, but just let them have access to invoices. The next item is job status. Here's another vendor management, gauge management item that we become extremely important to you as a customer, as well as important to us as your lab. Everything we do with the gauge, from the minute it hits our receiving department to the minute it hits the UPS truck or the delivery truck, is logged into our system. And you have access to look at it in here. So it's all the way logged into our system from the minute it's checked in to the minute it goes into the lab to the shelf that it's sitting on. So you can go through all of these fields in job status, and you can see exactly where it is. You'll see the job number. You'll see, we're going to go into one that's at our office, and you'll see the items that are on that number. Excuse me, on that job number. You're going to see the PO you assigned to it. You're going to see any quotes that would pertain to that job. You're going to see all the calibration that already has been done. Understand that we have several different labs. We've got a hard gauge lab. We've got an electronic lab. We've got a hand tool lab. And all of them, all the equipment that you send to us will go to various labs. So you're going to be able to see maybe the hard gauges were done quickly and 5 of your hard gauges are done, but your electronic equipment isn't done yet. You're going to see that right here on the calibrations that are already done for this particular job. If anything's been rejected, you'll see it here. If anything's been put on hold because it needs repair. If anything needs the repairs, you're going to see that. If we have had to place an order to one of our vendors to get parts for your repair, you're going to see that we have an order out there. Here's the date it was created. Here's the date we expected. If we're already to the invoice section, you know these gauges are coming. And then the package is actually going to show you the tracking number, the date it was shipped, the weight, the cost, etc. So when it comes to asking where are your gauges at Fox Valley Metrology, please use the job status field because it will really help you. And if you need to call us, certainly we're available to take that phone call. We're going to go into this exact same area to find what the status of your job is. Orders, again, that would be any orders that we have placed on behalf of some of the repairs we may have had to do for your repairs. Last but not least is our Ecrip. But before we go into Ecrip, Steve, are there any more questions? Because we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah, there is actually quite a lot of questions popping in here. Really appreciate everyone's participation in that. I think I've handled most of them. A lot of them were referring to the calibration screen, not necessarily the screens that you just went through. So I don't know that we need to have those necessarily addressed here on the call, but I just want to reiterate, you know, the importance of the vendor management side of the things here that Jennifer is going through. These are all incredibly valuable tools that are there to just make your life as easy as possible when interacting with Fox Valley Metrology, and realistically tools that just don't exist anywhere else. Getting to know, you know, how to build a quote list right from here, and making, you know, being able to put notes directly at the gauge ID level. As those items come into us, our technicians are going to see those right as soon as we start calibrating them. That's a hugely valuable tool. The job status tool, you know, I mean, that's far and away the number one question that we get from our customers is just asking for status updates on pieces of equipment. Getting to know that tab and seeing the, you know, seeing where status is, you know, you can answer those questions, you know, at a couple clicks of a button rather than waiting for responses or taking time out of your day to make a phone call. So really valuable pieces of software there. So with that, Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and just continue on, I'll make sure that any new questions that come in get addressed.
Sounds real good. Steve, based on one of your comments, I'm just going to go back down to the packing slips. Steve mentioned, and I didn't mention this, let's just say you're going to go ahead and put in a gauge here. Didn't put a gauge ID number in, so let me quick do this. so I can show what Steve was trying to refer to. Let's just say these angle blocks are coming in for calibration, but they're also coming in for repair. And obviously angle blocks usually aren't going to need a repair, but you can put those comments right here next to the gauge that needs repair. Let's say you have a micrometer that you dropped. You can put in dropped micrometer. The I don't know, something is loose on it. Right next to that line where you have that particular gauge ID number. So our technicians can't miss that we need to look at it for repair. Much easier than telling one of your account execs, oh, I'm sending something in for repair. Please make sure I get a repair quote. Then we have to make a note to our hand tool lab that this is coming in for repair. If you put it on a packing slip like this, it's a no-brainer. We're going to see it and it's not going to get missed. So I just wanted to zero back on that. And then we'll go back into the Ecrip, which I said we would talk about a little bit later. I'm going to try and kind of go through here as quickly as I possibly can. We got a lot more to cover. The reason for the Ecrip, we have had so many customers say, what's your biggest problem? Biggest problem in our facility is we can't find gauges. And people are losing gauges left and right. So basically, if you use this Ecrip, you should be able to find your gauges when you need them. It gives accountability to employees when they use them. There's traceability for jobs. When you do jobs and you check a gauge out for that particular job, there's traceability on what gauges were used on that job. So the sky's the limit here, guys. We can use this tracking for anything because the actual history is where the real power of this tool resides. It's simply a logging in the system and logging out, and data populates. We're finding some people are using this for there's a trend on calibration. Instead of just calibrating every 6 months, they calibrate it after so many uses because they're finding it falls out of tolerance after 150 uses. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. But basically, you're just going to track it. You're just going to put a gauge in here. And this is one I put in here purposely. And I'm going to show you what happens when we do this one. And I want to log out these angle blocks. And I'm going to use them on a job. So I'm going to put my name in here, the department, the part number I'm using them on, any notes, and then when I clock it out, it's going to give me time of day that I clocked it out. Now, notice this big red danger button. Let's say I'm not even noticing that danger button, but I want to use this gauge. I'm going to check it out, and it's going to say, warning, this gauge is overdue for calibration. Do you want to continue? So it actually stops you from using it if you shouldn't, because it's due for calibration. If indeed it wasn't due, then you would go ahead and clock it in and clock it out. You'd see the clocked out date, the checked in date, the time in and out, who used it, what department it was in, what part number it was used on, any notes about it. And so the check in and check out is really a valuable tool, the Ecrip History. The only thing that I will tell you about this is that I have a customer that uses this on a pretty regular basis, and they have a computer right in their gauge tool, crib tool, if you will, where they come in, they have a setup of a scanner. They scan the gauge out, populates it in here, take it out on the floor. 2 days later, they scan it back in. And then they have an entire history of who used it, where it was used. And it works really, really well for them. And then if a gauge is lost, we just go to that person that had it last and say, hey, Joe, what did you do with that gauge? Looks like you checked it on such and such a date. So the Ecrip is a really cool function. You can use it for a lot of different things. Before the time gets away from me, I'm going to rush through this last part here. We have an account administration area. In the administration area, this is really where your company information is. It's going to give you your company information, name, billing, ship to. It's going to give you contracts if you have contracts with us, UPS, FedEx, collect numbers. Also gives you instructions that you have provided to Fox Valley Metrology that you would like us to follow. You can also request instructions here, or you can turn them off here. User administration here is basically for an administrator that can go in and look at all of the people in your company and make changes. They can change their email, their phone number, they can delete them, they can manage their permissions for Metrology360 here. They can manage their notifications that are coming to their emails. One of the things that I do want to say is be very, very careful how many people you assign as an account administrator. Use it sparingly because you don't want too many people to have access to all of this information. We suggest 1 or 2. 2 would be important. So if one's on vacation, the other one can make the changes should they need to be done. You can add users here. You can edit users. A lot of you will be set up as an edit. You'll have access to editing your own information. So if your email changed, if your title has changed, if your cell phone has changed, if you are now a default for a different company, that can be set up here. So that's what the account administration part of it all is. And again, anybody who is set up as an account administrator would be able to do a lot of more information or edit a lot more information in here than what maybe you would be able to do. One thing we do suggest is turning off Metrology360 for anybody who's on extended leave or vacation. The other thing about user accounts, there's no limit to the number of users that you can have. There's no limit to the number of sign-ins per user. For instance, if you happen to have 30 computers on a shop floor, not everybody on that shop floor has to have their own unique username and password. You can set up a generic email such as quality@xyzmanufacturing.com, and all of those 30 computers can be set up with that particular generic email and log into Fox Valley Metrology. The other thing is when it comes to permissions for Metrology360, anybody who can edit records and add records, use that sparingly so people aren't just adding and editing willy-nilly. Make sure you have some kind of a system set up as to when and who gets to add and edit records. And make sure that maybe your invoices are on simply for your accounts payable department, but everything else here is turned off. You turn off things by just clicking on them this way. Same thing with POs. Maybe all quotes can be sent, or all the people who do purchasing can have access to quotes, but they don't need the rest of this information. So those are some of the things for all the user accounts information. Last but not least, we have our referral program. I am not going to click on that right now for time's sake, but just as of March 14th, we started a brand new referral program. And for years, we have seen our customers referring our services to friends and colleagues. When I had customers refer another company to me, I would always ask them, who referred you? We would like to thank them. Because we feel there's no finer compliment than having new customers say they were referred to us by one of our customers. Now, what we are able to do is we are now able to pay this forward. And if you will go ahead and refer a customer to us, we will give you a $100 benefit for that. We'll give her a $100 gift card. So there also, if you ever need help in Fox Valley Metrology, we do indeed have a help screen right here. This help area, this help button is going to take you to tutorials. There's a lot of great content here. If it would open up, but I can't seem to get it to open up. I don't know why. At any rate, I want to thank you for joining us today. Our time is just about up. We are positive that if you become much more coherent at using this system, you're gonna find that you can use it for so many things. You're going to be so happy with it and what it can do for you. If you have any further questions, we would certainly like to help you with those questions. You can certainly give us a call. We can give you some personalized training. Hesitate to ask any one of the customers at Fox Valley Metrology by filling out a request. Once the webinar is complete, you can stay in the browser and you will automatically be redirected to the login page for Metrology360, and you will get a link to the recording for this webinar for future reference. So again, we thank you very much.